afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Recruit Military Live, a continuing series of live broadcasts covering all things military transition, veteran employment, mil-spouse employment, and much, much more. My name is Lucas Conley, retired U.S. Army officer and former TAP program manager, here to share with you the ins and outs of transitioning to the civilian world of employment. If you're in search of meaningful employment where you're in the right place, please visit rmvets.com/live to learn more. All right, let's roll. We all know that meaningful employment in today's job market demands a good resume. It demands a great resume. And translating your military experience into an effective civilian resume can, for many of us, be more challenging than any obstacle course or road march that we've ever had to finish. If you want a resume that will get you the interview, well, you're in the right place. So don't touch that mouse. Today's topic is the ever elusive military to civilian resume. And we have with us a very special guest on the show today that's going to share her experience and her insights. Our guest this week is the founder and CEO of A Platinum Resume and Career Services. She's a 4-time certified professional resume writer. She has a 20-year background in federal government, civilian, and corporate positions. She has been writing professional and military to civilian resumes and career documents for over a decade. 75% of her clientele have been transitioning military service members. So suffice it to say, she's seen a thing or two when it comes to military resumes. She's also a proud Army brat, an Army wife, a mom of 2 spirited daughters, and a fur baby mom. Ladies and gentlemen, Kara Varner. Hey, Kara.
Hi, Lucas. Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm so glad you could join us on the show today. I really am looking forward to hearing some of the insights. There are plenty of people out there who have advice about resumes. 75% of your clientele is military, 10 years doing it. You must have seen thousands of these resumes by now.
Yes, I have, definitely.
All right, well, we're going to pay attention for the folks out there. You might want to take notes because this could mean the difference between a good salary and a great salary. All right, folks, now that you know who we are, we'd like to hear who you are. Hit us up in that chat window. Let us know where you're watching from, who you're with, what your status is. Are you a veteran? Are you transitioning? Are you about to retire? National Guard Reserves, a mil-spouse, a caregiver, or some other status we haven't thought of. And at any point in time in the broadcast, if you've got a question, comment, issues, or concern, jump right in, and time allowing, we will address them. Okay, Kara, as they say, we are wheels up.
All right.
Kara, anyone who's applied for a job in the past decade most likely has had to submit an application and a resume online. Even if you meet a hiring manager at a career fair or walk into a business interested in employment, in all likelihood, they're going to tell you, it's been great meeting you, apply online and send us a resume. As a result of this new digital era and unrestricted access, thanks to the internet, many employers have found, and quite quickly, I might add, the sheer volume of applications and resumes that they receive is overwhelming. It's completely unmanageable for any office. To solve this problem, many employers are using what are called applicant tracking systems, or ATSs. All right, what do the members of our audience, those transition service members, veteran job seekers and mil-spouse employment seekers, what do we need to know about these ATS systems?
The applicant tracking system is basically a tool, and it's used by about 90 to 95% of Fortune 500 companies. There's several reasons that they use these, and you just hit on quite a few of them, which is that we're a global society, so anyone, anywhere with an internet connection can apply for a job. That tends to crowd the system, the computer system. So they use the applicant tracking system, and there are actually probably about 100 different types of ATS systems that are available. They use those to parse out the resumes, to kind of handle that sheer volume that you talked about of resumes that come in at any one time. They also use them to remain in EEO compliance so that they are actually somewhat looking at every single resume that comes in. And on top of that, they also use them to parse out, which is kind of what we talked about a little bit. So they can select the candidates that they feel are most viable and meet the algorithms that they've actually screened and put in there, the data that they're selecting, so that they get what they feel are the most valuable candidates. Now, unfortunately, that doesn't always happen because there are several things that you have to do to meet those applicant tracking system algorithms. The keywords, the buzzwords, also having the years of experience, and anything that they have programmed that ATS system to parse those resumes for.
I read an interesting study just recently about applicant tracking system. There was a company that was actually, they designed, created, wrote the software for an applicant tracking system.
Yeah.
Then they had their senior engineers put their resumes into the applicant tracking system to apply for the jobs that they were already in, and they were disqualified. Did you hear that?
Yeah, I've heard that several times. And like I said, unfortunately, companies aren't always going to get the most valuable, viable, qualified candidates because of these types of systems. So for military, that means that you kind of have to go the extra mile, so to speak. You have to apply through the applicant tracking system. But the truth of the matter is 80% of employees are hired through referrals and who you know. So it's important to balance that out, to understand the applicant tracking system and that it's necessary, but also to know that your job search is most likely going to entail quite a bit of legwork in addition to that.
All right. So you can't get the job if you don't get it into the system, but that doesn't mean you have a fighting chance unless you reach out a hand, make a phone call, make a connection, and talk to people. Is that what folks need to know?
Yeah, I think so. And then, using LinkedIn to reach out, to network, also conducting informational interviews, doing things that are kind of a little outside of the box of what you may have been told previously. The not just using the applicant tracking system. The job boards are actually, or used to be, the least effective way to get a job. Now, COVID changed a lot of that because we weren't, networking, we weren't talking to people, we weren't seeing people. So job boards rose in popularity and actual effectiveness. However, now we're starting to get back to the know, like, and trust factor. There's a
Oh,
lot
okay.
of precarious lack of trust right now, unfortunately. And because of that, even corporations want people that they kind of know, like, and trust. So they'd rather hire someone that's referred someone that is
Hmm.
referred than necessarily someone that's walking right in the door through the applicant tracking system.
Okay, so you get the referral, and based on the referral, that resume is going in front of a hiring manager, so it better be a good one, right?
That's
Now,
right. Yeah.
I've heard the slogan, the mantra. I've heard the advice over and over again. Resumes need to be targeted to the employer before applying, and then before going into that interview, you need to do real deep dive research into that employer. Now, when we spoke last week, you kind of flipped it up a little bit and said, no, take that deep dive research and let's slide it to the left. Start doing that research before you target your resume.
Yeah.
Can you speak on that? But why is that sequence important?
That sequence is important because, especially when you're transitioning, we tend to just kind of throw that resume out there like spaghetti, hope it hits the wall, and you get a call. It's really important when you're making that transition to find companies where you want to work. And when you find companies where you want to work, then you do that deep dive research. You look at their missions, their values, especially their press releases, so that in your cover letter and also in your resume, you can articulate a little bit more about what you know about the company. And you can
Okay.
align your qualifications with the requirements of the company. And also look at their website. Every single job is not posted on a job board. Many jobs are either in the hidden job market or they're on the back end of that website. So you want to conduct that research. And that's kind of what I hit on just a second ago with the informational interviews. Contacting somebody within the company, maybe a couple of echelons above the jobs that you would be applying for. Ask for 10 or 15 minutes to meet for coffee. Many of my clients do this, and those meetings have gone for hours, and they meet friends, and then also they get referred for jobs, maybe in another company. So those informational interviews are very important as well. But everything kind of centers around doing that deep dive into the company where you want to work. You become a better interviewer as well, because then you're there, you have the enthusiasm, you have the excitement, and you know about the company that you're targeting.
Now, Cara, I think I heard you say cover letters. Everybody tells me nobody reads cover letters. Don't even bother with the cover letter. It's antiquated. It's out of date. Nobody reads cover letters anymore. So, should we write cover letters? Is there anything we need to know about them? Your
Most
thoughts?
definitely.
So, yes to the cover letter.
Yes to the cover letter. And it's true, not everybody reads them. I've done quite a bit of research, met with hiring managers, CEOs. Now, some of them toss the cover letter. Why did you send this? I didn't ask for it. I don't need it. They want to look at the resume. Are you qualified? See what's going on here and move forward that way. I've also met hiring managers that say, you know what, let me read the cover letter, find out why you want to work here. And then I'm going to look at your resume. Others scan the resume. Are you qualified? Okay, yeah, you are. So let me look and see why you want to work here. The importance about a cover letter is if you're down to the last two candidates, and let's say it's for Coca-Cola, for instance, and you have one resume over here, definitely qualified. You have another resume over here, definitely qualified. But they've attached a cover letter that talks about how they used to collect, and I'm going to date myself, those little Coca-Cola bottles, and how they lived down the street from a plant that had, that made Coca-Cola, and the distribution, and how you reach out and you do humanitarian for your organization. Who are they going to interview?
Someone who's demonstrated some passion there, right? Some genuine human interest.
Some enthusiasm, some knowledge about the company. So yes, cover letters are imperative. Now, do they get read all the time? No, they don't. But the resume is a sterile document. So you can't say any really pronouns or I like this or I'm excited about your company in a resume. But in a cover letter, yes, definitely. You can put in what we call the passion statement.
Awesome. And advice that I would extend as well, if you're going to do a cover letter, make sure you do it well. If you know you need help with your resume and then you write your own cover letter, please have somebody check it. In a previous role in my life, I've had a resume and it was beautiful. It was well formatted. It was succinct. It spoke to the needs of the job, to the role. It communicated to me that this individual was the right role. Then I picked up the cover letter, which was terrible. And so for me, it just told me that I should continue looking through my pile of resumes. So if you're going to do it, I'd say, please do it well. Have somebody review it and don't make it an afterthought. Put some effort into it.
Yes, definitely.
All right. Now, Cara, I can't count the number of times I've heard, a common piece of advice about military civilian resumes, and that's to civilianize your resume. Now, what does that mean, and why is this important?
It is important if you're applying for positions, kind of like what I talked about, Coca-Cola, or corporate positions, Amazon, Google, Green Mountain Coffee, companies where they're not possibly as familiar with that military jargon. And so stripping out that military jargon is important. Making first sergeant into personnel and operations manager, or rear admiral into CEO. Those things are important. And also, not so many acronyms in there. Or if you have acronyms, spell them out and make sure they're in context. A lot of issue with military to civilian resumes is that they'll have acronyms in there, which is fine because there may be no other way to explain that. But you have to have it in context. You have to explain what that acronym means or what it is that you do related to that acronym. Don't heavy load it with acronyms, though. But what I want to point out too, and you and I spoke about this last week as well, is that if you're applying to what I like to lovingly refer to as the usual suspects, like your Northrop Grumman or your Lockheed Martin or any government contract agency,
the defense sector.
Exactly. You don't necessarily need to completely strip out all that military jargon. They are looking for you. They are looking for those acronyms. They're looking for that military experience and knowledge and training that you have. That is what is valuable to them as you work with their primary customer, which is usually the government. So in that case, you don't have to completely, remove all of that jargon. They are looking for some of that expertise.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if you're looking for a job in one of those SIM centers with a government contract agency, and they're looking for an S2 analyst who knows how to run DSIGs, be clear. Yes. Be very clear that, yes, you understand what these systems are and you know the roles, because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for someone who can relate, who can advise, who can facilitate. So yeah, absolutely. 100%. If you're going into defense sector, hold on to that experience and don't make it ambiguous. Make it very clear of what you're bringing to the table. Now, I hear many times, communicate your value. Communicate your value, the value of your military experience, the value of the many, many jobs you've had, the many times you've had to lead, the many folks out there that you've had to manage over time. How exactly do I communicate my talent? Because what if I was speaking with a previous guest, an author, and he said more and more these days, the mantra is less about checking the box. Okay, you've got PMP, you've got a master's degree, you've got experience in marketing, check. And that more companies are leaning towards hire for talent, train the skills necessary. How do we communicate our talent, the talent that comes from years of military experience, while simultaneously not baffling the HR manager with military jargon? It seems to be a pretty daunting task.
It can be, and there's strategy behind that. So, what we talked about a little bit was storytelling. Resumes
Exactly.
now are about storytelling. So, telling your career in a story format. And so, my go to for that, and you may have heard of this reference before, is obviously the car example. That's your challenge, action, result. It used to be on the old NCOERs a long time ago. That's kind of how they wrote those out, is the car example. So, what was the challenge in that position? What was the action you took or that you delegated? It doesn't have to be something you did, it can be something that you strategized and you delegated. And then what was the result? And if you boil all of that down, that communicates your value and your talent. It's problem solving, it shows leadership often, it shows strategy, it shows knowledge and training, all within that simple CAR formula. Now, another go to formula is the SOAR formula. That's great for executives. Have you heard of that one before?
No, please tell us about it.
Okay, that is situation, opportunity, action, result.
Okay.
So there we stick in a little opportunity. So what is the situation that you're presented with? What was an opportunity that you saw to do something different, maybe something out of the box, maybe change training around, or something that became an opportunity? And then the action you took or delegated, and then the result. So it's kind of the same formula.
I can kind of visualize these as being achievement bullets.
Yes,
underneath your experience section in your resume, right?
That's correct. Underneath your position title, and then there's some context of what you do, and then hard-hitting accomplishments. And that's where you use the CAR example and the SOAR example. And one of the industry secrets that I shared with you last week was front-loaded accomplishments. So you take those bullets, you flip that CAR example on its head, and it makes a front-loaded accomplishment. For example, you have challenge, action, result. Now you take the result, put it in the front. You trained a platoon of 400 for the deployment mission. By doing XYZ, the challenge was that you were going to deploy. So just a simple kind of bullet point formula there, but flip it, put the result in the front, and you have a front-loaded accomplishment. They don't have time to read these resumes, honestly. They scan them 9 to 12 seconds. They need to know who you are within the first 1/2 to 3/4 of the first page. Why do they have your resume? They scan the bullets, so you need to have those accomplishments up front. And that's a great way of doing the storytelling and communicating your value and your talent.
You know, I've heard people say the paper fold test. Take
That's
your
it.
resume,
That's it.
fold
Yes.
it in half. All right, flip it open, and everything above the fold should be what you're hoping that they're going to read, because in 8 to 10 seconds, they're potentially not going to get through the whole resume.
That's so true. They don't read the resumes. They don't. I mean, the hiring manager eventually that's going to interview you usually reads the resume because they have to have a knowledgeable conversation with you about your experience. But before that, HR, they've got 400 resumes. They're rolling by on the computer. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. No, yes, maybe. So that's kind of the system that you are plugged into when you're conducting your job search and applying.
All right. And we've got a question here from the audience I want to go ahead and get after.
Sure.
Jeffrey Hartmeyer, he's asking, how many years of experience do you want to include in your resume? That's a great question.
Excellent question, Jeffrey. Okay, typically we go back about 10 years. And the reason for that benchmark is that even if you did the exact same job 10 years ago that you are applying for now, most likely you would do it differently just based on technology. The concepts are the same, perhaps, but the technology and the way that you actually do the job most likely has changed quite a bit. So 10 years seems to be a good benchmark to go back on your resume to show your experience. Now, for federal resumes, that's a totally different animal, but for your civilian resumes, about 10 years does the trick.
Now, you know, connected to that, and we didn't discuss it during our last conversation, but when you've got a long career, you know, we talk about chronological, combo, and functional. How much experience would you say drives a transition from a chronological resume to either a combo or a functional resume?
Well, those are three totally different types of resumes. So
Yes.
actually, the reverse chronological. So you go in reverse
Yes.
chronological order from the most current position back about 10 years. Now, your functional resume, in my opinion, doesn't work so well with military because usually
Okay.
there's no gaps in experience, there's no red flags, there's nothing that you're, trying to camouflage in that resume. And that's what functional is for. It's for gaps in employment, it's for some red flags, it's for things that where skills kind of lead over experience. So I usually tend to move military towards reverse chronological. Now, your
Okay.
hybrid combo format, that's the one, that's my go to all the time. And that takes the reverse chronological, it marries it with the functional, puts it together, and you have a hybrid combo. What that means is that under your positions, you're going to list the position title. Then you're going to give context of what you kind of do every day. So, how many people you manage, what you actually know, the operations you manage, budget possibly. And then under that goes those hard hitting accomplishments that we talked about in those car and SOAR examples.
Okay. I love it. This is all great stuff. Um, Challenges. Now, one of the challenges that many transitioning service members face is that they're going into a complete career change. Obviously, if you're in a combat oriented MOS, shooting, flying, blowing things up, navigating on a large ship at sea, these are not skills that translate well. All right. So many military in transition are doing a complete and total career change. Oftentimes, they have large experience gaps that they have to overcome to enter their new field. So, how can transitioning service members ensure their resumes are showcasing their talent despite the lack of industry experience?
It's funny you mention that because I feel that any position has some sort of transitional and transferable skills. And that is what you want to focus on. And I've created resumes for heavy vehicle fleet operators, um, what do you call it, a field artillery, infantry, and they're thinking, I don't have the skills, to have a management position. So we really want to strip those layers away because you do. You have transitional and transferable skills. Most likely you lead people, you lead training, you write SOPs, you have strategy that's involved in these positions. You have to target, locations. You have to do key leader engagements if you're overseas, working during deployment. There are many different skills and experience and training that I think that they just don't realize they have. And that's where a conversation is involved and kind of drilling down on that and understanding that these are things that companies are looking for: problem solving, leadership, strategy, training. Those are all things that are value add to any organization. So, yes, you hit on it exactly, a career change. That's exactly how you should approach writing your resume. You're going from your current position into another position. You're making a career change. So, look at the things that are transferable into that new position that you're targeting.
Cara, uh, quick question here. You've given us some great advice on things we should be doing with our resumes. Can you think of a few big time no-nos, mistakes to avoid?
Oh, definitely. Mistakes to avoid. Obviously, there's your grammar, your spelling. Make sure you proofread that resume. Proofread, proofread, proofread. But then on top of that as well, no pictures. I know that
Oh,
probably goes without saying, but I get that all the time. So no pictures on there. And one of the biggest mistakes I think that candidates make when they're creating their resumes is the heading up on top. Now, we touched on this a little bit. We weren't really going to, do a deep dive on branding, but on top of your resume, do not put profile or summary. This screams, I want a job. I'm not sure what job. I'm not sure what I do or what I'm qualified for, but hey, I want a job. Here's my resume. No. HR needs to know what you're applying for and why they have your resume. So if you're a logistics management specialist, put that on the top. If you're intelligence and communications, put that on the top. That is your branding title. And then
okay.
also the resume format. You don't have to put education second. You can put it last, but put a little bullet at the beginning. So there's a couple of different things that you do need to avoid. The one thing I'll touch on real quick is it can be 2 pages. And that may be a question we get or that you bring up. If you have, especially a 20-year career, 10 years, you can go to 2 pages. A networking resume can be printed back and forth for job fairs to hand out really quickly. But when you're applying, don't be afraid to use that white space and create a 2-page resume.
How about LinkedIn URL? Get that into the header.
Yeah, definitely get that into the header.
And do you see a parallel in content between your LinkedIn profile and the resume? How should those two things compare, in your opinion?
The difference with LinkedIn and your resume is that LinkedIn is a concise read. And actually, one of the most important things about LinkedIn is the summary. So you don't want to just cut and paste your resume and stick it into LinkedIn. The resume is written in kind of what I like to call, kind of a first, third person format. There's no pronouns in there usually. But in your LinkedIn profile, you can put pronouns. So you can talk about your passion and what you do and your excitement for your job. And then your career history needs to be very concise. Don't put all of your career accomplishment bullets in there, just the highlights. And then obviously you want to give recommendations, get recommendations, and use LinkedIn for what it's meant to be, which is for networking.
Amazing. All fantastic advice. And I tell you what, I'm going to go back and watch this recording after. I'm going to get some of this stuff down. All right. Who knows in the job market? I might be on the streets next week.
No, never.
Never.
Never. You're too good at what you do.
Well, I love my job and I love the company I work for, so I'm blessed in that regard. All right. Kara, final question, same question I asked of all my guests, my absolute favorite question. If you had the attention of a transitioning service member, a veteran job seeker, a mill spouse re-entering the job market, just 30 seconds, call it an elevator talk, passing in the hallway, what advice would you give them about their resume?
One would be to create it now. Start now. Networking can take a long time. You can make a lot of connections. 2 years out is not too long to start creating a resume and networking with it. Even though you're not available to take jobs, the knowledge that you're going to gain in the time that you're circulating your resume, getting those mentors, getting those connections with your resume is vital. And it'll only serve you even more on the back end when you're actually applying using your resume. The other thing is use all of the techniques we've shared with you today. Make sure it's storytelling, make sure your accomplishments are in there, and know that you're making a career change and get those transferable and transitional skills front loaded into your resume.
I love it. It's great advice. How many times have I heard it wasn't raining when Noah started building? You should not wait until you're unemployed to start working on your resume. Great advice, Kara. As we wind this down, Kara, just amazing advice, great nuggets of wisdom. Thanks for being on the show. If there's somebody in our audience who wants to spend more time talking with you or would like some assistance with their resume, how can they reach you?
Oh, thank you, Lucas. I have so enjoyed this. Thank you so much for having me here. And you can definitely reach out. I want to hear from you. My website is aplatinumresume.com. And I have a special gift just for your listeners. I have a brand new workshop, the first 3 steps for writing a powerful and modern resume. It's completely free. And you can reach that at karavarner.com/resume workshop. Real easy. So all of those nuggets I shared with you are in there as well.
And we do like free. Kara, thank you very much for being on the show. And for all of you out there in internet land, if you haven't already done so, do yourself a solid and head on over to www.recruitmilitary.com. There, you will find over 400,000 job opportunities for more than 16,000 employers around the world and around the corner. Recruit Military is on a mission to help transitioning service members and mill spouses and veteran job seekers to find meaningful employment opportunities. On behalf of Recruit Military and the folks that joined us today, Kara, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much. You guys take care. Stay safe out there.
All right. Thanks a lot, Kara. And for those of you who are planning on being with us next week, we've got 2 amazing folks from the special operations community who are going to be talking to us about their military transition, and they just happen to be married. So we're going to hear about that unique transition experience from both perspectives. You won't want to miss it. Until then, this has been Lucas Conley for Recruit Military Live. Until next time, good luck and Godspeed.